Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to week 2 of Tim Wyatt on death and dying and taking a look at overcoming the fear of death. What happens after we die? We're going to be talking about reincarnation and karma, evidence of reincarnation, and spooks and specters, and what are ghosts. We've got him here for the entire month. He's here every Friday. Welcome, Tim. Welcome back. It's good to have you again.
And thank you very much for asking me, Anne. Good to be with you again.
Well, it is my pleasure. And for those of you who don't know Tim, he's got a whole playlist here on this channel. We even did a sit down with him, which is one of my very favorite things. But also, if you don't know him, he is an esoteric author. He's a writer. He's written over 50 books. This month, we do focus a lot on death as it is leading up to Halloween. But very rarely do we go beyond and find out what it is we are looking at. We're going to do this in a question and answer form. And if you have any questions, please leave them down below, and we'll make sure that we can get to those before the end of the series. So I'm going to hand the floor over to our very own Tim Wyatt. And tonight, our subject is what happens after we die?
Well, thank you very much for that. And it's a very intriguing question. And one of the things I would say, first of all, is that your attitude, your state of mind when you die, your beliefs, your mental structure, the way you regard the whole process of death is to some extent going to color what happens once life has passed out of the physical body. So the physical body dies, and definitions of death have actually changed over the years. And so is it when the blood stops? Is it whatever? When physical death occurs, there is still an imprint on that body that we call the etheric double, which is like an energizing principle. And it takes, depending on the strength of that etheric body, it might take a number of hours or possibly even up to 2 days for that to finally dissolve. When we die, a lot of people actually don't realize that they're dead, which is a very strange thing to say, but people can pass on into the afterlife. And because of their attachments to people, to properties, to wealth, even to ideas, they still hang around these particular places. And this is why we get accounts of haunting. Sometimes people go back to these places time after time because they don't actually appreciate that they've died. But one of the things that does happen to everybody is that we have a life review. It can take time, some hours, and basically everything that we've ever done in our life unfolds before our eyes. You know, this is captured in popular parlance where people say, oh, my life flashed before my eyes, when they are in a dangerous, life-threatening situation. And this is precisely what happens. And the purpose of this seems to be to give a person some kind of, well, I suppose, for want of a better word, moral perspective. Events of their life are reflected as they impacted on other people.
This etheric double that you're talking about, would this be what we call our astral body? And what is it made of in your understanding?
The etheric body and the astral body are quite different things. The etheric body is something which energizes the human body during life. It's where our chakras are located. The chakras are not actually located within the body. They're located in different energy vortices in the etheric body. The astral body is something quite different. The astral is basically a non-physical template for everything that is physical. So everything on the physical plane, that table where you're sitting, or the car outside, or the tree, or whatever, has an astral counterpart. So you can look on the astral world as being like a prototype world where everything that's physical is first formulated, having been formally formulated on the mental plane. So the astral world is sometimes called the desire world. One of the terms for it is karma loka. That's not karma as in karma reincarnation, but Kama, which in Sanskrit is desire. And this is sometimes called a desire world because it's ruled by emotions. And astral matter is not physical matter, it's non-physical, but nevertheless, it is matter of a kind which is so loose and so uncoordinated. It's often described as a watery world. The world astral obviously comes from the word for stars, because everything's constantly changing in this world. And this is our port of call when we die. And the purpose of the astral world is basically to purify that part of ourselves, which has obviously gone through all sorts of experiences, good and bad, while we were in physical bodies. So basically, over a period of time, everything that's good about that is distilled, all the rest of it is discarded. And it's all finally contained within something which is sometimes called a permanent astral atom. You can look on it like a memory chip, which is then held over and reactivated when one is reincarnated in the next life. So this is the astral world, where there are different layers to it.
We've talked about this before on this channel, that dimensions are simply states of beings. Where is the astral located?
Well, it's not located anywhere, because it's not a physical world. Some people say that the lowest parts of the astral plane actually interpenetrate the earth and probably extend up as far as the moon. But this is a place without really dimension or time. It's a non-physical world, and it's a subjective world. So when people arrive here, they are going to get, to some extent, what they expect. If you are a fundamentalist Christian who believes in the devil and burning fires of hell, then that's perhaps what you will see. If you're a New Ager who believes it's all, a paradise type setting with waterfalls and mountains and everything, then that's probably what you will get. But there are different gradations in the astral world. So on the basis that like attracts life, really bad, nasty, horrible, cruel, mean people will go to one level, and people who, are more saintly and moralistic will go to higher planes. People who are intellectuals will gather together. People of different fundamentalist Christian or other religious beliefs will gather together. People who are interested in philosophy will gather together. And it's said that we would spend approximately a third of we live to say 75 years old, then we would spend an average of around 25 years going through this purification process. Some might take hundreds of years, and some would pass through in days.
The books are displayed. You'll see Firewheel books on the screen, and also Everyone's Book of the Dead. This is all in Everyone's Book of the Dead. And I will include links down below in the show notes for you if you'd like to know more. I wanted to ask you, Tim, how would you say to someone, how would you answer this question? Is hell real then? Is hell real?
No, it isn't. But some people may manufacture it. I think hell gets conflated with this for all sorts of complicated reasons. Basically, the astral plane is a place of purification, and that's why it's sometimes likened to the Christian state of purgatory, which is a state between heaven and hell where people go to be purified. But no, hell doesn't exist unless it's in your own imagination.
The power of thought and emotion. When you were talking about what we lived, when we get to move on, what is it that we take? We take our consciousness, we take our thoughts. Do those get to stay with us, our thoughts, in your understanding?
Yes, we do, because once we pass through the astral world, we then go onto a higher world. We effectively go through a second death. And that other part of us, which consists of our higher mental being, and our wisdom intuition principle and our spirit, transfers to another world, which can be likened to the Christian heaven. This is a place which is called the mental world, which is even more rarefied than the astral world. Now, not everybody's going to go here to this heaven world, or as it's called in the Sanskrit, Devachan, the land of the shining ones, because some people are just not spiritually or mentally or intuitively developed enough to require a stay here. So people who are relatively unevolved will incarnate directly from the astral plane. But a great many people will spend some time in Devachan, or the heaven world. How long we're there depends on who you read on this. Some people say it's, many centuries, perhaps up to 1,500 years. Other people say it's much less than that. So there is no clearly definitive view of this. And it depends to a large extent on your soul needs as to when and where you need to reincarnate again, and to what you need to do in terms of assimilation in this mental world where you're distilling everything that you've learnt in life.
Would you say that we're getting this information not only from the ancient teachings and comparing all of them together to get this answer, but also the near-death experiences as they're coming back? To me, they validate all this stuff. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, absolutely. I fully agree with that. And we mentioned this briefly last time, the way that near-death experiences, despite one's level of intelligence, one's culture, one's background, one's religion, these have a haunting similarity about them. People, going down tubes, emerging into bright lights and all the rest of it. And the fact that we've had more of these near-death experiences in recent decades because of the ability of medical science to prolong life much longer than it used to, there's much, much more evidence for these. And they all bear striking similarities. And the one thing that seems to unite them all is that when people come back, two things seem to happen to them. One is that they no longer have a fear of death. And the second thing is that a lot of them didn't want to come back. They much preferred it on the other side to the harsh realities of being on this planet.
How many times do you think we come back? Some people say this is the only show at the only time at the rodeo. But how many times? Is it just infinite? Are there people here who have never been here before? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, without getting too esoteric about this, there are basically two groups of people on Earth. The ones who became human beings on this planet, and ones who achieved individuality of soul, i.e. became human, during a previous cycle of existence, which is too obscure to go into at the moment. So that means we've got souls on this earth of very differing stages of development. How many times we reincarnate, it's not an infinite number, but we incarnate repeatedly until we have reached a particular stage of perfection, when we no longer need to experience the rigors of physical bodies, and we move on to a higher stage of evolution in which we are primarily spiritual beings and we don't need physical bodies anymore. For most of us, that's a very, very long way into the future.
I wanted to also cover here, people are going to be watching this thinking, how can I get ready for what happens when I die? We talked last week about many people are worried about the method of death, the pain that will take place. But how would you say, I know we talked about hospice too, just briefly. Hospice is beautiful now as they're talking about literally these very theosophical, philosophical, and even paranormal occurrences in the hospice room. They're bringing it out in front. How would you prepare someone or give them a little bit of hope? Because I love to see that death is nothing to be afraid of. And it's almost something to look forward to because it is a guarantee. Do you have any words to close this episode of hope for those who might be facing death or someone that they love is facing death?
Well, in order to have hope, you have to believe that death of the physical body is not death of everything forever. And if you are of a materialistic perspective, which a great many people in the West are, then there is no way that you believe in these subtle realms or anything like that. So frankly, there isn't that much you can say to people like that. But people who do have some belief in the continuity of life, then, it's much easier because you simply say that each life is a chapter in a book, or maybe just one word in a book. If we incarnate thousands of times, people can have comfort, but only if they accept the non-materialist paradigm that there are states of being which don't involve having a physical body. And it comes really down to that binary choice with people.
Thank you. I loved that you talked about the past life review, where you get a chance to see and experience everything that you said and did. But also there's something else that goes with it, and we're going to cover it in next week's episode, is that play of karma. So as you do, so shall you reap. If you touch the stove, you get burnt. We're going to be covering that with Tim in next week's episode. Please, please, please take a look at the screen. You've got Firewheel Books is where you can find Tim's works. We are talking about right now Everyone's Book of the Dead. And really quick, Tim, for those of them just catching this episode, Everyone's Book of the Dead was written because...
Well, it was written to demystify the process of death, but more importantly than that, it was written to help take the fear out of death, because death is most people's greatest fear. And I think if you can explain to people in rational terms that there is an alternative viewpoint to oblivion, then useful thing to do.
So comforting. Thank you so much, Tim Wyatt, everybody. Please check the links down below. We'll be back next week for Reincarnation and Karma. And then the week following that, we're going to be looking at proof of reincarnation, evidence of these children coming back. And also we'll be talking about ghosts. What are ghosts? What is it that we're seeing when we see these memory imprints, these specters and spooks, because it is that time of year. Tim, I will see you next week. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anne. Look forward to seeing you then.